Dristan Decongestant Tablets. The new 3-layer tablet for really effective relief from misery of sinus congestion, colds, and pollen allergies. Dristan presents The Secret Storm.
Is my father's fault, and now I can't even get hold of him to give me an explanation. I even got a babysitter this afternoon so I could go into town and try
Susan, if you ask me, your father's not going to appreciate the fact of your stopping in at the office so often.
Well, I told you he wasn't there. His secretary said he'd gone to meet Sam Bloom, and you know what that means.
No, I don't know what that means.
Oh, for goodness sakes, Alan, Sam is a lawyer.
And a good family friend.
His secretary was all aflutter, too. Though, of course, Muriel wouldn't confide in me. Nobody does. I told her to make sure and tell my father that we were expecting him here for dinner tonight without fail.
Okay, he'll be here. But, Susan, look, if I were you, I'd go easy on your dad. You know, he's having his troubles and...
He's making them. I may not always have been the biggest fan of Brian Fuller, but for my father to accuse him of practically embezzlement... Alan, you should have been there at Aunt Pauline's yesterday when Brian stormed in.
Yes, you told me.
Well, I can't forget it. If Pauline has lost her husband, then she can thank Peter Ames.
I thought you were so anxious for Pauline to get her divorce.
All of you misjudge me. There's no excuse in the world for Brian's carrying on that way with Lucy Stokes, but that certainly doesn't mean my father has the right to trump up a lot of false charges and...
What makes you so sure they're false?
Brian told Pauline he's going to give the money back. He's not even going to stay on at the store. Alan, you should have heard him. He was absolutely outraged.
Yes, I'm sure he gave a fine performance.
It was no performance. He told Pauline he loved her, and he'd always loved her.
And you believed him?
Don't you think I can recognize the truth? Alan, I almost wept, and Aunt Pauline was weeping. And that's the last I saw of her. She hasn't even called me today. She probably blames me now because I've been so harsh to Brian in the past.
Maybe you were right.
Whose side are you on?
Honey, I'm on your side. I don't care whether you believe Brian loves Pauline or not. As long as you believe that I...
You make everything so personal.
Susan?
I have to take a look at the roast. Alan, I wish you'd give Dad a ring at home. He may have gone straight back to the house while we sit around here waiting for him. Now call him, will you?
Okay.
Peter, Helen, Susan left a message for me.
Oh, we're expecting you. Come in.
Everything's all right?
Who rang the bell? Alan, will you answer the door?
Brace yourself, Peter.
I'm sorry I missed you at the office, Susie. I had rather a busy day.
You don't have to make a big pretense, Dad. I know you've been trying to avoid me.
Would you like a drink, Peter?
Yes, Alan, just a light one.
Yes, I think it would do us all some good.
If I'd been trying to avoid you, Susan, I wouldn't be here right now, would I?
Well, I really don't see how you have the nerve to face me. After the shameful way you treated Brian Fuller and the anguish you've caused Aunt Pauline.
Sue, am I wrong, or did you send me an urgent message asking me to come to dinner tonight?
Apparently it means nothing to you that you've wrecked a man's life. Not to mention Aunt Pauline.
Now, calm down a little, Susan.
You wouldn't be telling me to calm down if you'd been at Pauline's yesterday when Brian told us about my father's incredible, unwarranted accusation.
I'm sorry, Peter. She's in a stew because she hasn't heard from Pauline all day.
And that's another thing. You've been making trouble between me and Aunt Pauline.
Would you like more ice than that, Peter, or something?
I don't think I want this at all.
Oh, yes, now you're going to play the injured party. That's an old trick, Dad, but it's not going to get you out of this mess you've started.
Susan, whatever it is you have to say, I insist that wait until after dinner.
We're not ready to eat yet. The roast isn't done.
10 minutes ago, you were worried about its drying out.
I turned down the light in the oven.
All right, then we'll go and We'll go and look at the baby. I know Peter wants to have a look at his grandson.
And start him howling for the rest of the
That's
evening?
all right, Alan.
Oh, yes, you can count on Alan to side against me, as he always does when the chips are down.
Now, look, Susan, we invited your father to dinner. He's a guest in our
Never
house.
mind, Alan. I don't think I'll be staying for dinner.
That's right, run.
Peter, please.
I'm
look.
not running until I tell this young lady a few simple, hard facts. Now, sit down, Susan. I said sit down.
Oh, the
And
nerve.
just keep your mouth shut until you finish listening to what I have to say to you.
If you expect to bully me in my own living room...
Susan, in heaven's
Wait a
sake.
minute, Alan. Let me handle this. This is between me and my daughter. My daughter. You've grown into a stubborn, arrogant, selfish, interfering woman. You speak without using your head. Worse still, without using your heart. I tell you, my daughter, one of the saddest sights in the whole world is a beautiful woman whose heart is unbeautiful, is unfeeling.
You dare tell me...
I have to tell you. It's my unhappy responsibility as your father.
I don't hear a word you're saying.
Good. You just sit there. You're going to have to look at some of the blunders, just a few of the blunders that you've made this past year.
I couldn't be less interested.
Oh, I'm sure of that. If you had been interested, there wouldn't have been any need for me to drag out these mistakes. You'd have looked at them yourself. Long ago. Now, in the first place, Susan, there's Myra.
Myra? What does she have to do
Ever
with it?
since I have married Myra, you have been burning with this distrustful hate. You can't accept a lovely woman as your stepmother. You're too jealous of the affection that she gained so easily from Jerry and Amy.
What you're really saying is that I'm smarter than my brother and sister. I'm too smart for anybody to pull the wool over my eyes.
Is that the way you look at it?
How would you know? You're so blind about your precious Myra that you couldn't even see when she was carrying on with Brian Fuller.
Susan.
Susan, you can't even be true to your own sentiments. Unfailingly, you pick the wrong people, the wrong causes. Just because they're in opposition to me, or to Myra, or to both of us.
Oh, you flatter yourself.
You're all out for Frank Bennett and his school property swindle. Then you're all for Pauline's divorce. And now, at last, at the very wrong moment, you defend Brian Fuller. Just at the moment when I unearth the whole wretched truth about him.
You've unearthed nothing but lies. Brian didn't take any money from the store. You've been mistaken about the whole thing. As you'll very soon find out, because he's going to give that money back.
Correction, Sue, he has given it back.
He has given it back?
Gave the money back this afternoon.
Well, there, you see, I guess that shows you that he's...
All except for $10,000. Now, according to Brian, the company's withheld this because the orders had been canceled.
Well, that sounds perfectly reasonable to me.
I'm sure it does, Susan. Except I've just come from a meeting with Sam Bloom earlier this evening. He's been investigating those companies. It seems that every company that Brian Fuller dealt with does not exist.
I still can't believe it. After the way Brian talked to Aunt Pauline yesterday, he was really guilty. Guilty. Guilty of what, Alan? Can a woman ever really trust a man? You see what happens? Pauline no sooner forgave Brian than he turned right around and betrayed her again.
I didn't realize that Pauline forgave him.
Well, she would have. I almost believed him myself. What do you think Brian used that money for? You think it was that girl? Could he go to prison for a thing like that? Well, don't you have any opinion, Alan? What are we going to do now?
It's apparent that nothing can be done until your father talks to Pauline.
Poor Aunt Pauline. Suppose she isn't home when he gets there. She didn't answer her phone.
He'll find her.
I should have insisted on going with him.
You did insist.
I suppose you enjoyed the way my father talked to me this evening. All those horrible things he said about me, all those lies.
No, I didn't enjoy it.
It never would have occurred to you to stand up for your own wife, to defend me.
It did occur to me, Susan. And I felt ashamed that you didn't leave me any grounds for defense. No grounds at all.
Oh, haven't I heard enough criticism for one evening? You saw what I went through, and I just had to sit here taking it. I'm surprised you didn't walk out with my father. Leave me here all alone to cry myself sick.
I'm surprised at myself. But I guess as sorry as I was for him, and as sorry as I am for myself, I'm even sorrier for you.